So, Mr. Isaacs, how long have you been in wrestling for? Just out of curiosity.
How long have I been into wrestling?
Yes.
Since about 1987. I was 5 when I started watching.
So the point I always mention that is we've been obviously wrestling fans for quite a long time between us both, and this week as a whole, it's got to be the most craziest thing ever in wrestling. Obviously, we'll get into the news later. Would you agree?
It's up there. Yeah. I mean, if you had to put together like a list of weeks of like the biggest weeks in the history of wrestling news, I think this has definitely got to be up there.
It has, it has. Of course, we will be discussing the big Vince thing. We're not going to be going into detail. And for our main event, we're going to be looking at a New Japan star, somebody who obviously I've watched a lot. I know you're obviously a big fan of the New Japan. Who's the guy?
Kazuchika Okada!
Intern, roll the intro. And welcome to episode 130 of the Magic of Wrestling podcast. I'm, of course, one half of the host, the magician, Liam Wakeland.
You guys know me. I am the American half of the equation. I'm going to be a very busy boy today because on top of doing this, I'm also hosting the Royal Rumble recap show on behalf of F and Wrestling later. So I'm the F and expert. I'm Mr. Isaacs.
Of course. And Mr. Isaacs, it's obviously time for our weekly catch-up, my man. How's things?
This has been a shitty week, figuratively and literally. I had a stomach bug all week, man. Like it, it beat the hell out of me. So I basically just stayed home. I worked from home and stayed close to my bathroom all week. But it seems like today is the first day it seems to be okay. So that's good. Good in time for the Rumble and for our discussion of Okada here.
Yes, of course. It's funny you mention that. I mean, you always get that week where there's a bug going around and you're thinking, really?
Ugh.
But I'm glad you're all right. So you've probably not done nothing much this week then at all?
Not much, no. I have sat in my chair and watched TV. I did watch wrestling, and yeah, it's been a draining week, man. But I'm pretty optimistic going into the weekend that these next couple days are going to be better.
Of course. And yeah, I mean, obviously we've got two major topics to talk about. We'll get straight, obviously, into the part one. We call it. What do we call it?
The Magic Weekly.
And of course, the Magic Weekly is brought to you by one of our sponsors, Mr. Isaacs. Tell everybody about FTW Wrestling.
Brian Idol and Natalia Markova, two NWA wrestlers, will teach you how to be a professional wrestler. You can learn the fundamentals. If you're anywhere near Florida, Largo, Florida specifically, $250 a month, FTW Wrestling will teach you the fine art of professional wrestling.
Here we go. Let's give you a little teaser.
Determination, perseverance. These are the qualities that make a champion. Do you have what it takes to be the next wrestling superstar? Are you ready to turn your dreams into a reality? At Fight the World Wrestling's World Wrestling Academy, we can help you become the champion you were meant to be. Our world travel trainers, Brian Idol and Natalia Markova, are well-known industry professionals with years of experience in the world of wrestling. From the basics to advanced techniques, they are dedicated to help give you the tools that you need to succeed in the ring. Our training program is tailored to challenge you, push you to your limits, and help you discover your full potential. Come join our diverse group of talent. Join us at Fight the World Wrestling's World Wrestling Academy and make your dream a reality. Visit our website or contact us to learn more and start your journey to the top today.
Hey, son of a bitch.
Oh, dear. Today, not tomorrow, not the day after.
We need to add that to the end of the promo. Today, son of a bitch.
Right
Let's
then.
give a shout out to some people in the house here. We got the Shane Experience in the house. What's up, buddy? We
I love
got
that.
Tiffany in the house. Hi, sweethearts. Hey, sweetheart. How you doing?
Aw.
And we got our pal Noob, my homie, always in the mix. Glad to see
He's
you.
always there.
Yes.
I will got to ask him how many shows has he actually watched? Probably every single one.
He's on. I think he's on about all the ones I'm on usually. Yeah.
There you go. That's good enough. Noob as always, and people watching. Thank you, obviously, for your support. But of course, we have to start with the biggest news. Now, everybody can read everything what's been going on with Vince over the past 48 hours. We're not going to go into detail because people can obviously see that for themselves. But Mr. Isaacs, it's really, really shocking. A lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm not so much shocked that that there were some allegations here. I am a bit shocked by the details. Some of the explicit details. It was kind of yeah, it's not great. I mean, you know, you don't want to think about Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis like teaming up on some lady. I mean, that's not a very good thing to keep in your head. That's for sure. Very gross stuff, man. Like very, very gross stuff. It's a shame that this all came out a couple days before the Royal Rumble because I don't feel like it's fair to the wrestlers that are actually in this event that have to kind of have this dark cloud looming over them. But at the same time, it's Vince's fault. It's not this lady's fault. It's not her attorney's fault. You know, Vince McMahon is the sole person at fault here. And it's just ridiculous. Like the way that, and I guess we should preface this by saying none of this has been 100% proven in the court of law. We do have to preface this and say that. So these are allegations, but it's sick stuff, man. And it just kind of gets to that corporate big business. I'm untouchable. I'm on top of the world. I'm the dictator around here and everybody has to fall at my feet mentality that oftentimes pervades the ruling class here in this country and corporate capitalism. It's a shame. It's disgusting. It's definitely a black eye for wrestling.
Yeah, it is. And the thing what really got me is, like I said, you mentioned it there, the detail that everything obviously has been described. It's, again, we're not going to go into it, but the thing that really caught my eye with this is apparently this is because of an NDA. Apparently, Vince has obviously paid some installments on this NDA, then all of a sudden he stopped paying it. Then this is how it's all came about. Again, I think you're right, Joe. Is the timing wrong with this? Really?
I think it's unfortunate, the timing of it. Because like I said, it puts the people that are currently there, a few of which might have known something about this, most of which I assume didn't. You know, I would assume most of the active roster had no clue of anything about this. But, you know, everywhere they go now, someone's going to be talking about it. You know, if they run into a fan at a gas station on their way to the arena, they're going to get flooded with questions about Vince. You know, that's the part that kind of sucks for them. So the timing of it, I think, is kind of unfortunate. But again, that's squarely on Vince. It's not anything to do with the alleged victim or anything like that. But yeah, it's not a good look, man. Not a good look at all. And you know, I mean, obviously, the allegations are not, you know, fully like Weinstein-esque, but it's kind of drifting that direction. A couple of lines in this are a bit Weinsteinish, and if you look over the lawsuit, you'll know what I'm talking about. As in regards to consent, it's nasty stuff, man. Like there's no place for this in society these days. And to be frank, I hope this kind of corporate boss dictator type structure dies with Vince's generation, and I think it will. Because I think younger business executives don't act like this and don't carry themselves this way. They're a little more savvy to, you know, what is appropriate and what's not. So I think this is going to disappear from culture, but it needs to hurry up. This is really, really gross, dude.
Yeah, and the thing, obviously, in the lights of obviously these allegations, is obviously Vince has obviously now stepped down. Slim Jim did pull out their advertisement. I do believe obviously they are going to be sponsoring the Royal Rumble. What what do you think implications this is obviously going to have on WWE as a whole?
I would suspect that TKO is going to demand a massive crackdown on certain types of interactions between employees in the office and in the workplace. Everyone's going to be under a microscope for sure. I mean, I saw a report this morning that indicated that TKO might be looking to get rid of some Vince McMahon cohorts, for lack of a better word, proteges, people that worked closely with Vince. So, I mean, you never know. I mean, we could see guys like, I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but we might see people like Bruce Pritchard, people that were like known to be Vince guys, might be disappearing soon.
And now that kind of leads me to my perfect segue, because obviously an hour before we came on the air, Ronda Rousey put this tweet out, or is that it said Bruce Pritchard is basically Vince's avatar. If he's still around, Vince still has a hand in the business. Vince was still running things through Bruce when he was gone before. What do you think?
I believe it. I mean, Ronda's kind of a straight shooter, whether you like her or don't like her. I'm sure she's seen and heard some things that led her to make that statement. And, Bruce Pritchard is a very loyal McMahon guy. Like, even when he didn't work for WWE, when you listen to his podcast, I mean, the guy was like hyper defensive of the McMahon family, even though he was fired by Stephanie. He's a McMahon guy through and through. I mean, he's a McMahon crony. He's known to be such. A lot of people in the industry have said that he is such. And I think that I would, if I were a betting man, I would bet against Bruce Pritchard's chances of moving forward in this company.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right when you said the other. I think these are going to be obviously a lot more crackdown on stuff like that. Do you think there's going to be a lot more internal investigation, because there's still so much more to come out, I believe?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And one thing that was noted in the lawsuit too was that the committee that looked at the allegations a couple years ago, supposedly, Stephanie and Triple H were on the committee, and nobody from the committee even spoke to the alleged victim. So it's just kind of a sweep things under the rug kind of deal, I think is what it was. But now that TKO is taken over, they're going to see it differently. They're a new publicly traded company, and they don't want this. And I think there's going to be widespread ramifications for this. And I do think there's going to be a lot of internal structure movement and a lot of investigations. And I do think there's going to be more people on the chopping block. I just hope that, so-called cancel culture doesn't get a little out of control. Like, I don't think we need to go at like every single person that has ever had a relationship with Vince. Like, I don't know if we need to, start going after the Undertaker, start going after John Cena. I mean, let's wait till we see some evidence that some people had direct knowledge of this before we start asking for their head on a stick. We don't want to get too extreme about this.
Yeah, and one final thing, obviously, to end on this little thing. What lessons do you think need to be learned from this?
Well, kind of like what I said before, the old school, the boss is the king, the leader, that old mentality, it's got to be gone. Like, and like I said, you see in business culture that mentality is kind of starting to go out the window. And it's like businesses are starting to kind of see themselves a little more in a collective light than this is the guy who founded the company. He's the king, and you bow down whenever he walks in a room. I think corporations are going to have to move away from that, and I think that they are. And I think TKO is no exception. I think that, there's going to be a guy in charge, Nick Khan, Triple H, whoever, but like, they're not going to wield as much power and carry as much of a big stick as Vince McMahon always did for years. And that's for the better.
There you go, and that's a nice little thing to end on. So we'll obviously shift focus from that story, and we'll stick obviously with WWE. Now, something which caught my eye this week was WWE and Netflix. Now, I was speaking to a friend of mine, obviously, who he knows wrestling, but not as much as we do. And he said, is this going to be live or is this going to be pre-taped?
It's going to be live. Yeah, I mean, Netflix is looking into adopting live programming. And to my knowledge, this is the first consistent weekly live programming they've ever signed to a Netflix agreement. They've done comedy specials in the past that have been live. But this is going to be the first like actual weekly show that I'm aware of. But this is something Netflix has supposedly been looking at for years. I've seen articles about this, 4 or 5 years ago. So it's not surprising to me. I kind of thought it was going to be like Amazon or somebody like that, someone that has already been kind of doing live streaming. But, I think this is interesting. Netflix, I looked up some numbers, and I think it said cable is in like about 32 million homes in America. And Netflix is in like 250 million. So like the disparity there of Netflix and cable is like dramatically increasing by the year. And cable's a dying medium. It is. And I think it's absolutely the right move to an all streaming service.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we spoke about for weeks on end is obviously streaming is the way forward. I didn't know obviously about the Netflix thing going live. That's why I was thinking, is it going to be like the pre-tape thing? But no, I mean, I think almost everybody who I can think of's got Netflix. So you're going to obviously get that bigger audience and stuff like that. Yeah, I think streaming is the way forward, and I think cable will be dying out slowly. So I cannot disagree on that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, it's hard to say about like certain areas of the world where maybe like broadband internet's not like a very big thing. I know that still exists in some remote areas of the United States, for example, like in the mountains and Appalachia and everything. Like they have trouble getting high speed internet. But it's getting that direction. And eventually, when broadband is universally available across the board to everybody, I think cable's going to die. I think it's going to be done. I think it's going to go the way of the DVD and the VHS. Like it's just no longer going to be around.
Have you still got some DVDs, but just out of curiosity?
I do. Yeah, I have a big booklet of about, I probably have about 300 or 400 DVDs and Blu-rays.
The funny thing is, when I'm out and about and I see a DVD, I still buy it, but then I'm thinking, what am I buying it for?
I haven't bought one in a long time, but here's the thing: when I through the 2000s, we would go to a Walmart here in America, and they would have what's called the $5 bin, and like I'm always like a big fan of like horror movies and comedies and shit like that. So if you go to the $5 bin, you would find all kinds of classics. It was like digging through treasure and finding gold. And I mean, I use that to just amass a very large amount of movies. I mean, I literally have a gigantic booklet of DVDs and Blu-rays, and it literally is about 400 of like every kind of major horror movie, action movie, and comedy movie that you can think of from like the 80s and the 90s into the 2000s. Of course, now I watch everything digitally, but I still have them. I'm not getting rid of them for sure.
Yeah, I've still got the old school, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on VHS, and I've just refused to get rid of them. It's my childhood there, John, in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that they have a YouTube channel that has been running like 24/7 streams of the old cartoon. For some reason, that's popped up for me a couple times on my suggestions. I'm like, huh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, fortunately, there's not much from AEW. It's more obviously WWE, and of course, sticking with the WWE theme, The Rock has obviously been in the news. What do you think?
I think him joining the board of TKO is, I think it's a good thing for the company. I mean, I honestly thought there are two suitors that I thought would be perfect for buying the WWE when it was on sale. One was Endeavor, who obviously ended up making the purchase. The other was The Rock. Like, I honestly thought that The Rock and his investment group that he deals with would have been a perfect owner for WWE, especially since he is a wrestler. And there is nobody in the history of professional wrestling that has broken through on a major scale in pop culture and in the business world than The Rock. And there very likely will never be again. I mean, this guy has amassed more wealth and more celebrity status of any professional wrestler ever in history. At least here in the United States. I mean, you could make some arguments about, some people in Japan that ended up becoming, politicians and that such, like Inoki. But yeah, I mean, The Rock is it, man. And, he's so synonymous with fame and big business and the WWE that I think it's a perfect match for him to be part of this company. And I think it kind of takes some of the stink off of, the old regime with Vince too. It's like, Vince, The Rock is a guy who knows wrestling that is younger and more astute and more professional and will help move the company forward away from the old guard of McMahon.
Yeah, and the thing is with The Rock, I mean, obviously he's made a big, obviously, career obviously in the movie thing. I mean, when I think of a wrestler who's transitioned to obviously movies, The Rock's got to be up there. Do you know what I mean? There's so many great movies he's done. John Cena's probably a close second for me, but he's got to be The Rock. I mean, and his acts of kindness. There's just so much good stuff when it comes to The Rock. So I feel like this is a move best suited all the way around, to be honest.
I agree. I would argue Batista's probably number 2 over Cena, but yeah.
Well, it depends.
Guardians of the Galaxy is bigger than anything Cena's ever done in film.
Okay, Batista's second.
Yeah. I think you got to give Batista the number 2 slot, but Cena's right there at number 3. Yeah.
I completely forgot about the Guardians of the Galaxy. Damn it.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit more time to obviously before we get to the main event. And of course, it's the Royal Rumble. There's 2 obviously big matches. Well, there's about 4 matches. Are we excited? What we're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to it, man. I think it's going to be a good show. There's a whole lot of hype and a whole lot of rumors about who's going to show up, who's going to win. I was watching a show this morning of a legendary podcaster that I watch from time to time. He was going over some of the odds for WrestleMania, for the Royal Rumble. And a lot of people seem to think what I think, which is that Jade Cargill is going to show up and win the Women's Rumble. I think Jade Cargill is going to win the Women's Rumble, and I think The Rock is going to win the Men's Rumble. That's what I think is going to happen. What do you think is going to happen, Liam?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because on the group chat there was a little competition, and one of the things was, "Oh, do you think it's going to be a surprise entrance?" And I actually put The Rock. Do you know what I mean? I originally thought, do you know what? Let's do it. And it's got to be Punk. It's either Punk or Cody Rhodes for me. It's got to be one of those two. If it's The Rock, is it a slap in the face? You could obviously debate that, but I don't know, man. I mean, obviously 2 people coming back and stuff like that. It's got to be Punk for me. The women's side, I'm not really looking forward to it. I will be honest.
You mean you're not looking forward to the annual return of Michelle McCool or whoever? Where they dig up like divas from 15, 20 years ago and have them come in and get eliminated in 30 seconds.
Well, I said Bayley obviously might win this the women's one.
There's a lot of people that think that, and I think Bayley would be my number 2 choice, and the reason why is because they've been teasing her leaving the Damage Control faction.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, who's the SmackDown champion? Io Sky.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be natural for Bayley to win the Rumble and then be like, well, I don't know who I'm going to choose to face. And then their Damage Control is going to be like, WTF, what do you mean you're not going to choose? You're going to choose Rhea Ripley, right? And then that could cause a rift between them. And then Bayley's going to go against Io Sky. So she's my very close number 2. I don't know, man. Something just my gut tells me it's going to be Jade Cargill, but the story's there for Bayley. So I could see that happen too.
What about the matches beside? I think Logan Paul's up against Kevin Owens, and there's Roman Reigns as well. The Roman Reigns match, you never look forward to it. I'm kind of getting bored of that, but the Logan Paul one's really surprising me. I feel like this might be a surprising match.
I'm going to be totally honest with you. I think this is going to be a great match. Mm-hmm. I really do. Logan Paul can work, man. Like, I know he's kind of a special case and he's not a fully trained wrestler, so his matches kind of have to be planned out a little differently, but he's good. He's athletic. He can pull off the spots. He looks more convincing than a lot of guys that do it full time, in my opinion. I think he's pretty damn good at this. And I think he goes over Kevin Owens tonight because I think he's going to hold the title to Mania and someone will take it from him there. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if this is match of the night. I'm being honest with you.
I'm calling it. We'll listen to it. Logan Paul, Kevin Owens, match of the night. Let's catch up on some comments while we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Noob says that Bailey's going to win. That's a good choice. Tiffany says Bailey and Punk. Haney says it's going to be Gunther. Well, I mean, it's a possibility. I love Gunther. I would have no problem with him winning. Noob says Michelle McCool came out of the crowd like it's a game show. Yeah, I remember that. They played her music and she just like jumped over the guard. It was like The Price is Right. It's like, Michelle McCool, come on down.
What a game show, by the way.
Because she came and got excited because she could guess the price of the washing machine or whatever. GM Joe says, I'm going to go with Becky. Bailey to get eliminated by Damage Control. That's a possibility too. I think whatever happens in the Rumble, I think the Bailey Damage Control dissension is going to be advanced as a story, whether she wins or not.
Yeah, I think that's a fair little comment there.
Sting's not going to win because he can't draw a number. Now, are you saying he has carpal tunnel? He can't physically draw like an 8? Is that what you're saying?
No idea. No idea. That match wraps up the Magic Weekly. I mean, I also got a mix of stuff there. I would have liked to have obviously thrown some AEW stuff in, but this week has just been absolutely all WWE, to be honest. Yeah,
there's no AEW news right now. And I mean, I know we all love AEW, but it's just been like, I mean, the shows have been decent, but I mean, there's just nothing really going on right now that's newsworthy.
Yeah, of course. Right then, should we get into the main event?
Well, just real quickly, Randy asked who's pick for the men's rumble. I guess we didn't go over that. I think The Rock's going to win the men's rumble.
I'm going to go with Punk.
All right, let's go.
There we go. Main event time.
The main event.
There we go. Of course, the main event is brought to you by our second sponsor, the Kill City Cup. The best way I can describe this is Mortal Kombat meets wrestling. We'll play you a little trailer and tell you how you can watch it.
Welcome to the Kill City Cup. By the ball.
There we go. I was waiting for that. Of course, you guys can go check that out by numerous ways. Number one, it's in the description of this video. Number two, you can head to YouTube, type in Kill City Cup. Or number three, killcitycup.com, I believe. I hope I've said that right. So now are your time. You will not be disappointed. Right then, should we shift focus from WWE to New Japan?
Let's do it.
Of course. Now, when I think of New Japan, I think of the four pillars. I think of Naito, I think of Ospreay, I think of Tanahashi, and I think of Okada. Well, Ospreay's obviously gone to AEW. Tanahashi, I think, is more behind the scenes. Naito's still there, and obviously Okada leaving. I'm going to be honest. This man has been a staple for New Japan for as long as I can remember. I mean, would you agree?
As long as I've been a fan, yeah. Which, I started watching New Japan semi-regularly probably 2014. Whenever they had their Access TV deal, back when I actually had Access TV for a few years. I got into watching it then, and that was, of course, the height of Okada and his famous feud with Omega.
Mm-hmm.
That really kind of put like modern day New Japan on the map with the IWC. And Okada was just always that guy. And he was the big wig. He was the top guy. I know Tanahashi was like the top guy throughout like the 2000s, but as he kind of started to age out of the main event picture, Okada's been that guy. And I mean, he's been that guy for a decade in New Japan now. And it's very interesting to me that he's not going to be there anymore. And it leaves a lot of questions that we're going to examine today about what is next for this guy. And if he could be a global superstar on top of being a Japanese superstar wherever he goes.
Yeah, and the thing is, we didn't speak about this last week. For you, obviously, as a fan, how do you obviously feel that he is leaving New Japan? Is it sad? Is it mixed emotions? Is it something long overdue? Realistically?
I mean, I think it's about time, really. I mean, he's done everything there is to do. The guy's been IWGP champion like 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's main evented like many Wrestle Kingdoms, which of course is the equivalent of WrestleMania for New Japan. New Year's Eve in general is always, well, I know it's not New Year's Eve when Wrestle Kingdom is, but around New Year's Eve is always like the big primary television viewing for Japan. It always was for MMA as well. Pride Fighting always used to do their Shockwave shows on New Year's Eve, and that was usually their biggest show of the year. So this is just a time that they always had a lot of major shows in Japan, and Wrestle Kingdom was the New Japan variation of that. And Okada was always the guy. Like, he was always number one. He was always the guy that got the big pop, came out with the robe, all the fake money falling from the sky. Like, he had that kind of Inoki-esque kind of look. Inoki always came out with the robe. And I mean, that's kind of what they built him to kind of look like that, like a modern day Antonio Inoki.
Yeah, and the thing is, obviously now he's got options. A lot of people think WWE. Now, we'll obviously talk about that scenario. For me personally, I feel like he would be too restricted being in WWE. We know that obviously everything that you can't obviously work for other promotions and stuff like that. I feel like the first thing WWE would probably do is change his name, which do you know what I mean? This is the things I'm thinking. What about you?
I think they would be absolutely foolish to change his name. I think that if he had gone to, WWE 15 years ago, they would have changed his name. I don't think they would now. Shinsuke Nakamura kept his name. Virtually everybody that comes from New Japan, which isn't very many, but anybody that comes from New Japan and works in WWE typically keeps their name. Kushida, when he was there, he kept his name. I think it'd be foolish to change his name. They did change, obviously, like Asuka's name when she came in. She wasn't New Japan, obviously, but she was Kana in Japan. But Okada is just such a name. Like, he is a A-list celebrity in Japan. And I think if the WWE is serious about expanding into Japan, they need to keep Okada as Okada. Be a huge mistake to bring him in and try to change his name. Don't do what TNA did back in the day and call him like Okado and try to make him like the Green Hornet Bruce Lee. Because that was god awful.
Yeah. Do you think he'd obviously fit in on WWE? And I'm talking obviously with basically the branding as a whole.
So this is an interesting question. Because to me, it all depends on how they use him. Now, I think under the old Vince era, I don't think he would be used very well. I think he would come in. I think he'd be a mid-carder. I think he'd be forced to do comedy skits. That's what I think would have happened under Vince. Triple H seems to have a little more reverence for Japan and the Japanese style, and I think that the WWE is wanting to expand into Japan vis-a-vis working with All Japan, who they actually talked about buying a couple years back, and then that kind of fell by the wayside. and they loaned Nakamura over to Noah, to let him wrestle Great Muta in his final match. So I think Triple H wants to embrace Japan a little more and get into that market space. And so I honestly think Okada would be used better now if he went to WWE as opposed to if he went to WWE like 5 or 6 years ago. And I think that he kind of fits their style a little bit. I'm going to give a shout out to Trey J Styles because I heard him mention this on one of the shows he was on recently, and it was a brilliant point. Okada works a slower, methodical, technical style that the pacing of his matches kind of more so fits big WWE matches. Kind of slow, kind of prodding around the ring. It's not so much like jump and run and jump and here's a big spot and here's a big spot and run and jump and like in AEW where everybody's slingshotting around like toys. So I honestly think as far as in-ring goes, his style might fit the upper tier of WWE better. I could see him having these style of matches with Cody and with Punk and with Seth Rollins. And I could see him putting on a good match with Roman Reigns. I think they could work well together. I think he would do well in WWE. I think people are not seeing the full picture here if he went to WWE. I think that if he did, I think he could really be a star if they use him right.
Okay, so I agree with obviously in the ring style. I feel like it would fit in really, really well. But for me personally, I don't think it'd be a good move all around because, like I said, I feel like it'd be too restricted. Because the thing is, I feel like Okada would want to go back to New Japan, whether that be, like working a special show or something like that. And I feel like being in WWE as a whole, it would be restricted. We know obviously what it's like with the branding and stuff. So
That's true.
on that, so I'm kind of, mixed feelings to be honest.
Yeah, and that's kind of a point for the AEW side.
Mm-hmm.
If he went to AEW instead of WWE, he could still work Wrestle Kingdom every year, which he probably would.
Mm-hmm.
And New Japan would absolutely want him to do that. He would probably want to do that. So he would probably still work big matches there. I think it would be kind of like what Ospreay's going to end up doing. I think he's going to do the same thing. I think he's going to work mostly in AEW, but he's going to go back for big spot show appearances in Japan. And it just depends. I don't know the nature of why Okada left New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
If he had some kind of issue with the leadership, maybe he has no interest in working for them again. But if he does, and if that's important to him, then I think that's a big feather in the cap of AEW of him going there.
So you made a point, I think it was last week, you said that it might be weird with Okada coming to the States. Obviously, he's big in obviously Japan and stuff like that. Is that something which might play a factor?
I think it could, yeah. So for those of you that are unaware, Okada's wife is apparently a huge A-list actress in Japanese cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very unlikely that she's going to want to uproot and move to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen. And from all indications that I've seen, she's a lot more famous than he is. So I think that he's probably going to cede to her and her fame, which is going to be drawing more money for their household. So I don't know if we're going to see Okada full time in America, so to speak. I kind of wonder if he'll work, maybe for AEW and kind of do like what they do with Rio, come in and work for a few weeks and then go back to Japan for a while and then come back and work a few more weeks and then go back to Japan for a while. I kind of wonder if that's the deal that we're going to see.
So just catch both of us in the comments here. And it says, Tiffany Trim says, I would honestly like to see him at NXT. NXT needs to go back to the all black and gold direction. And I think Okada will be a good start to have him there. What do you think?
I think it would definitely be a shot in the arm. I haven't watched NXT in forever, honestly, because I completely lost interest in it. It started to suck. But Nakamura's run in NXT was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
When he was the NXT champion, Nakamura might be my favorite NXT champion of all time. He probably is. I can't think of anybody that I liked better as champion during that era. If they gave NXT the reverence of the old black and gold shows with the takeover shows and the big crowds and everything, I could definitely see Okada being like the guy, the top babyface for that promotion. But Okada's like 36 years old, I think. And you don't want to like waste him away in NXT too long. I mean, I could see it maybe for 6 months, but you got to strike while the iron's hot. I would suspect that if he did go to NXT, it would be a very short stint.
JM Joe says, I'm not sure why he left, but Okada said he wants to perform at WrestleMania.
WrestleMania is the big show in pro wrestling. Whether people want to admit it or not, it's like the show that professional wrestlers aspire to be a part of. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against that idea. One show, obviously, I want to throw at you, and the reason, obviously, they're on the up is, of course, TNA. Now, obviously, they signed Nick Nemeth. Okada, I think, was at their last pay-per-view as well, and he got a really great crowd reaction. I want to be honest, did you see that?
I did not. How was it? Did you see the matches?
I saw the match, and a really great match, but I was more focused on, obviously, the crowd reaction he got. He got a great reception. And obviously, we've said that, obviously, TNA is now obviously on the up. Is that an option?
I mean, possibly. If he just wanted to work kind of semi part-time in America, I mean, I could see it. I don't know if they would have the money to pay him to come in on a consistent basis. I don't know how much he's going to want. And I don't know what the budget for TNA is. I think TNA is kind of a wild card option here. I don't think that's where he's going to end up on a, semi to permanent full-time basis, but it's definitely in the mix. I mean, if he ends up for some reason not going to WWE and not going to AEW, I could see him consistently working in TNA. Yeah. And I think it would be a feather in the cap of TNA for sure. Because the smart marks are the ones who watch TNA now. TNA has no casual viewership anymore. Let's just be honest. It's completely gone. So if you want to appease the smart crowd, Okada would definitely do it for sure. And might be able to help them kind of get new viewership in Japan. So, I mean, I think it'd be a great move for TNA. I don't know. The wild card here is that we just don't know what Okada wants. We don't know if he's doing this for money. We don't know if he's doing this for more opportunity. We just don't know. There's a lot that we just don't know about his motivations or what he's seeking to get and wherever he goes next. But yeah, I mean, I think if he doesn't end up in one of the big two, I think TNA is definitely a viable option for him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. We don't know obviously what Okada wants. Now, the only other two shows I can think of off the top of my head, which is pretty much, I won't say it's near impossible, but it's highly unlikely, is of course MLW and NWA. I don't see any of those two. Possibly MLW. I mean, they've obviously signed Callahan, Riddle. Who knows?
I could see if he worked at MLW, I think it'd be for like one or two shows. And I could see that. I mean, I could see him working one or two shows for MLW. He's not going to sign a contract to work full time for MLW. That's just not going to happen. NWA, no, I just don't think he fits in well there at all. I don't think the style of wrestling that they do, I just don't. It's just not fitting for Okada. I don't think. I would be highly surprised if he went there. But I mean, if Billy Corgan wanted to get a big pop with the internet wrestling community and threw a lot of money at him, I mean, who knows? But I would highly doubt that would happen.
Yeah, they were just like left field, like not near impossible, but never rule them out. So we've looked at obviously all options. For me, obviously what we've discussed, who do you think, being a fan like we are, is the best fit for Okada?
Man, that's a loaded question. And I kind of see it 50-50. I'm going to be honest with you. The reasons I gave earlier for him going to WWE, if they treated him like a star, like a real star, and let him come out with the full, regality and the robe and, the Rainmaker gimmick and propelled him up to main event stature, I think it'd be hard to argue WWE wouldn't be a good place for him. But on the flip side of that, Tony Khan is probably going to throw a lot of money at him. I think Tony Khan would probably pay him more than WWE unless WWE had a real interest in expanding into Japan. And I think if he went to AEW, he would be hot shotted into the main event picture without having to do anything like NXT or anything like that. So he'd be a bigger deal right out of the gate. My concern about him in AEW is, I'm just going to be honest here, I don't know what big matchups he would have in AEW versus what he would have in WWE. So the big matches he would have in AEW, Danielson, who he's already wrestled twice, which is cool.
Injured twice.
Right. He's already wrestled him technically 3 times if you count a tag match. But he's had Danielson. He could work with MJF, assuming MJF comes back, which, I mean, I'm sure those two would have a great program together. I mean, who else is he really going to work with? Samoa Joe, that would be cool. It'd be cool to see him work with the top guys in AEW. But then you go over to the WWE side. You could see him work matches with Reigns, see him work with Punk, see him work with Cody, see him work with Seth Rollins, maybe see him work some matches with Finn Balor, Drew McIntyre. And I'm going to be honest, when you're looking at those matchups, I'm kind of more intrigued by the WWE side of those matches at this point.
Okay, so I
know you disagree with that, so tell me why.
I mean, I'm not against those matches, but I'm going to be honest. I don't think AEW or WWE. I think TNA.
Yeah,
I just think
okay.
The reason I say TNA is obviously I watched TNA myself. Speedball Mike Bailey against Okada. I feel that'd be a great match. Josh Alexander, I think, is vastly underrated. Kushida. Do you know what I mean? There's Moose. Do you know what I mean? All these types of people. I feel like it could work so well.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong there. I think, God, Josh Alexander and Okada would be like one of the greatest matches ever. I mean, I watched that Josh Alexander match with Will Ospreay, and like my jaw dropped at how amazing it was. It was HBK versus Kurt Angle in his prime. I mean, that's what that match looked like to me. So yeah, I do think that if Okada went to TNA, I would love to see him work with Josh Alexander. I'd love to see him work with Speedball Mike Bailey, Nick Nemeth. I would love to see him work a long running program with Nick Nemeth and have some great matches. Yeah, I mean, that's intriguing. I got to say, I think that handful of TNA matches is more intriguing than what he would do in the top of AEW, if I'm being honest.
And then the other thing, obviously, the reason I said that is I still feel like he wants a route back to New Japan, obviously working Wrestle Kingdom, the shows like that. I feel like if he goes to WWE, I feel that's out of the question. Do you know what I mean? So it's either AEW or obviously TNA. And for me, you're absolutely right. I feel like you'd have more great matches in TNA. So on that basis alone, I would say TNA for me personally.
Hey, I can't argue with that. I can't argue with it. I think if they strap the rocket ship to him and make him the babyface, the number one guy in TNA, I wouldn't hate that. I mean, I would consistently watch TNA if he was like the number one guy there.
Absolutely. So obviously I want to take a few steps back and obviously talk about obviously New Japan now. With him obviously leaving, is this going to hurt New Japan as a whole? Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, dude, think about this. They're losing Ospreay and Okada at the same time. I mean, that's pretty huge, man. I mean, that's 2 guys that have been like, 2 of those pillars, like you talked about. You mentioned 4 pillars. Naito's really going to have to step up because he's going to be like the guy now. Like, Naito is going to be Okada for the next couple of years. They're going to have to try to build some younger guys. They tried to put the IWGP title on Sonata. It just didn't go very well. Shingo Takagi, they made him champ for a while. I mean, he was okay. They're just going to have to find some guys that they can elevate and be true stars in Japan. And it's going to be hard, man. Okada's been that guy for a long time. And when they're losing him and they're losing Ospreay,
Mm-hmm.
I think New Japan's going to lose a lot of relevance this year. I hate to say that because I love New Japan, but I think New Japan's stock is going to dramatically go down this year, and a company like TNA is going to go up pretty dramatically.
Yeah, and from a fan's point of view, that's really sad to see because we always want every wrestling show to do really, really well. And you're absolutely right. I feel like obviously Naito's going to have to step up. I can't think of, apart from Sonata, who else stands out for me, really. Do you know what I mean? There's still, obviously, I think Finley's still there. Do you know what I mean? There's them people like that, but
I mean, they've got
still
great wrestlers, but I don't know if they have anybody that could step up and take the role of like the Rainmaker. I don't know if they have anybody that has that kind of mystique about them right now. I mean, obviously they do have a lot of really talented wrestlers. I mean, New Japan is stacked from top to bottom of very talented technical guys, but you know, there's a difference between being a great technical wrestler and being a star.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. I mean, without losing Okada and then Ospreay being gone, I don't know, man. I think New Japan is going to have a bit of a tough year ahead of them.
Do you think things will also change internally with New Japan? Obviously, Tanahashi's part of the board now. Do you think they're going to change the way they run in a way, like show-wise?
I don't know. I mean, New Japan kind of has a tried and true formula. You know, they're not big on storylines. I don't think they're going to become more Americanized. I think they're going to stick to the Puro style.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to work on U.S. expansion a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Which I watched that what was it, Battle at the Valley or whatever from a couple weekends ago. That was really good. Shingo Takagi, who I mentioned earlier, had a death match with John Moxley of all people, and it was really good. It was entertaining. I liked it, and of course Okada and Ospreay blew the roof off the place with an amazing match. And I saw that Julia chick everybody talks about for the first time too. Like, she looked really good. So that's a good card. You know, if you haven't checked that out, check it out. So, I mean, if they could put on more American cards and kind of generate some American interest, you know, maybe that'll help keep them on the map a little bit. But I still think this is going to be a rough go for them. I really do. They're going to have to find some people on their roster that can be a big star in Japan. I just don't know who it is, man. I mean, Naito's going to try. Like, he's going to try. But, you know, Naito's up there in age, too. He's been around a long time. And I mean, Naito and Okada, you know, played hot potato with the IWGP title a few times, swapping it back and forth. There's only so much he can do. They're going to have to elevate some new stars, and I don't know at this point who that's going to be. They typically use the G1 as their way of building a new star. So as we get closer to the summer, let's see what they do with the G1 and who they seem to be propelling up there. But I don't know if they're going to mess with the formula. I think it's going to be the same, you know, technical style, not really doing angles very often. Use the G1 to build up a contender, and then they go and face the champion at Wrestle Kingdom. That's been their formula forever, and I really don't think they're going to change that at this point.
As you were saying that, one question which obviously just popped into my head there is, they obviously do a lot of partnerships, obviously with AEW, TNA. Do you think, obviously with Okada gone now, they're going to rely on this a little bit more?
I think they're going to have to. Yeah, I mean, if they're going to try to keep some buzz and you know, stay on top of things, I think they're going to have to rely on partnerships. I don't know if you remember, but do you remember way back in the day when they had a strong TNA partnership, and like Kurt Angle was the IWGP champion and Team 3D was the IWGP Tag Champions?
Yep, I do. So that's when I actually was watching TNA, funnily enough.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to. They're probably going to have to work with international companies to try to stay afloat in the lexicon of the IWC here in relevancy. So yeah, I can see them working more with TNA and with AEW, and it's not going to happen with WWE. WWE, I think their Japanese territory that they're going to work with is all Japan. Yeah. Which we've already seen. Apparently, they've sent some NXT guys to go work some matches in all Japan. So I think that's going to be their kind of WWE proxy territory, so to speak. But New Japan's got to find some people to partner with, and they've got to find a path, because I really do think 2024 is going to be kind of a down year for them.
I guess we shall definitely see. So we've got obviously about 5 more minutes. Is there anything obviously you want to talk about with Okada which we've not discussed?
I have seen some people say that there's a chance he'll be in the Rumble. I don't think he will. My understanding is his contract runs to January 31st.
Mhm.
So even if he did join WWE, I don't think he would be in the Rumble tonight. What do you think? Do you think there's any chance at all he'll be in the Royal Rumble?
Not if his contract doesn't run out, because then are you in the terms of obviously breaching contract type thing? So no, I just cannot see it. Do you know what I mean? Him in the Rumble. I'd be very surprised if he is. I will be honest. And knowing me, I'll probably be asleep and then wake up to a message you going, he's in the Rumble.
Like how everybody was like, there is absolutely zero chance that WWE has any interest in CM Punk. And then Cult of Personality hits right at the end of Survivor Series.
No one way you actually tweeted, like, messaged me, and I was sleeping. I woke up to a message from you saying, he's here. I'm like, what?
We all thought, oh, everybody's full of shit. He's not going to be there. And he was there. So, I mean, I never say never. I don't know. But if I were a betting man, I would bet against Okada being in the Royal Rumble. I mean, he could end up in WWE, but I don't think it's going to be tonight.
We shall definitely see. So I've got a comment, I believe.
I don't think Okada shows up. WWE has had enough bad news with contract tampering. Yeah, I guess he's referring to Tony Khan's allegations that they were trying to poach some guys from AEW last year. Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's for sure.
No, you don't.
The WWE has been in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've been in litigation for that in the past. If I'm not mistaken, I think they had some kind of litigation with TNA like way back in the day, and I think it had something to do with that. And GM Joe says also MLW. Yeah, MLW was in regards to like the TV deal, but yeah, I mean that's a contract too, obviously. WWE has been in litigation with several wrestling promotions over the years, which is interesting.
It's literally like turf wars.
Yeah. It's like, no, we have the better guys fighting in their underwear.
Don't mention underwear, what we've covered in the first part. Let's obviously wrap all the show up, of course. You guys obviously want to find us on social media. It's Mr. Rise. It's on Instagram, Twitter. That's your YouTube channel as well, I believe.
It is.
Of course. Effing Magicians, obviously on Twitter, on YouTube. You guys obviously want to check out All Effing Wrestling, effingwrestling.com. Everything's all on there. You guys obviously want a t-shirt, right? You can head to prowrestlingtees.com/effing wrestling. You can get the Magical Wrestling t-shirt. The All Effing Wrestling t-shirt, which is modeled by a friend of the show, Natalia Markova. Mr. Isaacs, tell everybody about the old school.
If you like old school wrestling, and I know you do, you could go to prowrestlingtees.com/Adrian Adonis, who has his own episode of the Vice documentary series Dark Side of the Ring.
Of course. And we've got to plug a show, which is obviously coming up after the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble After Dark plus a steel cage. What's this steel cage match thing? What's going on?
Canada Dry wants us to also talk about the tag team steel cage match that's going to be on Collision. I mean, I don't know that I'm going to be able to watch both at the same time. Maybe I can dispatch him to do that and then tell us about it later. But yeah, no, tonight we are doing a Royal Rumble post show hosted by yours truly. I'm in charge of it this evening. So who the hell knows when the Rumble's going to end? It might go off at midnight, but whenever the Royal Rumble ends, you can come back here and see myself, Canada Dry, GM Joe, and JFB are going to be joining us this evening. And we're going to have the Fantastic Four of Royal Rumble recaps. So it's going to be a fun show. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of excited to talk about WWE for once. Like I've not done a full review of a WWE show. I don't know ever since I've been a podcaster. Because I mean, this is mostly an AEW centric show. We've got after dark shows for AEW. So I'm kind of excited to kind of like step into a different world here and kind of like talk about some fresh names that we don't discuss very often.
I mean, if you think about it, today's show's basically been WWE and New Japan.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that I've ever talked about like a Rhea Ripley match in detail on a show here, because I mean, we don't really talk about WWE matches here very often. We talk about kind of the overarching news, a lot of which is bad. But, it's going to be kind of interesting. The Royal Rumble is always a fun, exciting show, and I'm looking forward to it. So everybody tune in and check that out. I'll make sure it's entertaining for you guys.
Of course. And obviously, to end your week, we've got the All Life in Wrestling show, which is a roundtable feature that will be with me, myself, Byron, I think. I can't remember exactly who it was. And of course, JP and Canada Dry. And yeah, of course, the Magic of Wrestling will be back on Thursday as I interview the Tag Team of the Year in the UK, by the way. So stay tuned for that. And I'm not quite sure what we're doing next week yet. We'll probably discuss that after the show. Right then. One last thing
Who knows? Something big might happen in the next few days, and we'll just talk about that for a whole show.
There you go. So, the one final thing, Mr. Isaacs, you do this every week. You're the absolute best of it. See us out to the outro.
I'm going to keep it a little short and simple because I'm kind of tired and I got some stuff I need to do. But, we all go through hard times here. Like I said, I had some health issues this week that kind of put me in a depressed mood. Whether it's family issues, relationship, money, health, maybe you got issues with a job, maybe you got issues with a friend, whatever issues you have, you've just got to keep a positive mindset, because I've discovered that your outlook on things is going to dramatically affect your mood. Don't say I have to, say I get to. I get the opportunity to do this, not I have to do this. And just that little switch alone is going to make things so much better for you guys. But we're always here for you. You know the deal. Reach out to me anytime. Reach out to any of us anytime that you need somebody to talk to. We're a supportive community. We're here for each other. We love you guys. Keep the fist up. Just keep fighting.